Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our LCAP State and Federal Programs Units State and Federal Programs Directors Meeting. We know many people are probably on spring break, and others are looking forward to that spring break, perhaps coming up next week. I'm Adrienne Balcazar, and I would like to introduce the LCAP State and Federal Programs Unit. Today, joining us is Debbie Cano, Helen Choi, Augustine Garcia, Jeannie Keith, and Anita Lomali. I also want to introduce our support staff today, Maribel Leyva. To access today's presentation, we ask you to click on the link in the chat, and this will take you directly to the slides. If you do use the link at the top of the slide here, this will take you to our Canvas page. And here you can find the presentation, as you see in the icon, as well as the agenda and any other resources that we have available for you today. Today's topics are for the equipment inventory procedures, ESSER 3 requirements, Prop 28, LCAP update, and the FPM update. As usual, we ask you to place your questions in the chat box, and we will answer any simple questions if we can. We will be following up with written responses in a Q&A that will be emailed to all of you. And we also are recording today's training, and we will post this on our Canvas webpage as well. And now I'll turn it over to Anita.
Hi, everyone. I hope that if you are here with us, that you either have enjoyed your spring break or you're going to be enjoying the spring break that's coming up. Okay, so hard to believe, but we've come to the end of the month of March, and March is the beginning of spring, and it's synonymous with butterflies, beautiful white clouds in the sky, an occasional spring shower, and perhaps a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. Our SFP and LCAP unit pitched in for some lotto gold this week and came out winning a total of $6. And so needless to say, we will not be retiring anytime soon, but we know that we are golden nonetheless with many other blessings. A pot of gold can be figurative and symbolize the realization that all of one's hopes and dreams, or it could be ultimate success, fulfillment, or happiness. If you found a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow, besides the gold that it would contain, lots of it, what else would you find in your pot besides the gold? Go ahead and place your answers in the chat. I was hoping somebody would say that. Like a Willy Wonka ticket. Somebody would write my LCAP for me. Time, yeah, very precious. Harry Potter fan. Beirut. A ticket to Ireland. Family. Health, yep, for sure. Vacation. More time on vacation. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. Now that I'm over 50, for sure, probably health and peace. Can you find more than one? I'm not sure. Thank you. Okay, and so now that we had the good feelings, now we go into the thick of things. And we'll start with equipment inventory and procedures. Thank you, Helen. So going on. So right around this time of year is when school site leaders are planning for the summer or the new school year, and there may be upcoming changes to classroom assignments. School leaders are working with their custodial staff to ensure that classrooms are put away properly, to allow for the detailed summer cleaning. Or you may be planning for summer school to take place on campus, and you might have students or staff members from your site or from other sites. Or your expanded learning opportunities program will be running full swing over summer. You may even be trying to meet those pesky purchasing deadlines that the business offices seem to impose right around this time of year. But whatever your situation might be, it's a perfect time to think about your inventory control. And with so much movement around schools, classrooms, offices, and warehouses, it's a good time to keep tabs on where your equipment is or where it will be housed. And so, as a friendly reminder, an LEA must establish and maintain a historical inventory system for equipment with the acquisition cost of $500 or more per unit when any part of a federal award or state restricted fund was used in the purchase. An LEA required to comply with this inventory system includes county offices of ed, so us too, school districts, and directly funded charter schools. And included in the inventory are the following details, and there are 13. The type and description of the equipment, the model and the name, the serial identification number, the funding source, and the federal award identification number, the acquisition date, the original cost, its current location and use, the title holder, its current condition, the percentage of federal participation in the project cost for the award under which the property was acquired, and any ultimate disposition data, including the date of disposal and sale price, or the method used to determine current fair market value. So you may be thinking, okay, sounds good. We got it under control, Anita, don't worry. Or maybe you're a doubting Tom like me, and you're asking, okay, who said we have to have this inventory list and it has to be so detailed? Well, truth be told, as a condition of receiving federal funds, LEAs are responsible for complying with many legal requirements. And in a nutshell, there are many places where the inventory is explained, the inventory list is explained in either legalese or in layman's terms. To begin, the Education Department grants administrative regulations, lovingly referred to as EDGAR, shown here on this slide as a red book, provides the set of rules, policies, and procedures established by the U.S. Department of Education. Regulations fill in practical details about how a law will be implemented, but they do have the full force and effect of law. In addition to EDGAR, here in the first blue book, there are administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements issued by the Office of Management and Budget under the Code of Federal Regulations. And here you'll find regulations that address inventory management requirements and other related issues around financial management. And both of these reads can be intense and may not be the most entertaining while drinking coffee on a Saturday morning. I'll be honest. The federal agencies may also then issue non-regulatory guidance, as in the case of the second blue book here on this slide, which is actually very good. Additional information about the law is found here in plain language format. And furthermore, California Ed Code, the last blue book on this slide, enacted by our state legislature, serves as the legal framework for education policy and practice in the state. And so the nuts and bolts of the regulations, policies, and procedures are tidied up into the federal program monitoring instruments, which serve as the most useful and practical tool. And so right about now, you might be saying, okay, I believe you, but what does this inventory list need to look like? So LEAs are able to create or use an inventory form for equipment pertinent to these regulations, so long as the information mentioned 2 slides previously is adhered to. So your list can be electronic. It can be shared with predetermined staff members on a shareable spreadsheet. Really, it's up to the LEA. Your LEA's policies and procedures around the completion of the inventory form will be critical for future grants awarded and for the inevitable federal program monitoring. So ensure that your LEA's policies and procedures on what to include in the inventory and what information will need to be gathered is communicated clearly. And so some questions to consider are, what will you need to add, if anything, to your current inventory list after this presentation? When during the school year Is the list shared or required to be completed? How will you inform all personnel and departments purchasing equipment within your federal programs of these requirements for keeping the historical inventory of each equipment item that cost $500 or more when it was acquired? And where can staff find answers they may have about the inventory list? And who should they contact if they have questions? Ensuring that written procedures for managing equipment is in place in your LEA will be a critical precursor to keeping great control of your equipment inventory and ensuring a successful and less stressful FPM review. Out of the 20 programs monitored by CDE, 14 of them require an equipment inventory record or written procedures for managing equipment in accordance with federal and state requirements. And the programs are listed on this slide for you. So there are evidence artifacts that will be requested during a review, and these requests include general ledger for the specific resource code, vendor invoices, written procedures for managing equipment, and a historical inventory list of all the equipment purchased for $500 or more, and a record of the last physical inventory of items. A note to point out is the word historical, which means that the inventory record must contain the history of the equipment inventory. So it is ongoing and showing the useful life of the equipment. And although the physical inventory is required to be conducted at least every 2 years, CDE does recommend that this be done annually. And as you are in the midst of beginning your consultations with private schools for equitable services, keep in mind that equipment purchased with federal or state restricted funds over $500 per unit must also be included in the district's historical inventory. The same list of details, remember there are 13, that need to be included on the inventory, such as model number, location of use, original cost, etc., applies to this equipment as well. Inform and remind private school officials that all equipment and supplies purchased with federal funds are the property of the district and will be removed when the program is no longer in place or when the program ends for the school year. It is a best practice for the items on the inventory list to be housed at the district while not in use to ensure control of public funds. And here are some key points to address in your system for keeping track of equipment inventory and control of your equipment allocable to federal programs. Maintain a historical inventory of all equipment with a unit price of $500 or more and include private school equipment on the LEA's inventory. You must conduct a physical inventory of your equipment at least once every 2 years, and you must reconcile the results of that physical inventory to your official LEA equipment inventory list and complete any necessary follow-up. The historical inventory list of all equipment purchased for $500 or more requires that copies must be maintained at the school site and at the district office. If items are missing because they were stolen, this must be recorded in a police report or in a letter to the police describing the items and giving their identification numbers. Be sure to include this information in the inventory list. Okay, so now we're ready for a quick check-in for understanding. To track control of equipment, an LEA must A, B, C, D, or E. Place your answers in the chat. One of these days, I'm going to add one of those wheel of names. And we'll find out the answers. Excellent. This was a great review. The correct answer is E. Equipment inventory lists are not only for Title I schools. Whether or not a school site is a Title I school, any equipment purchased with federal funds or state restricted funds, such as the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program or federal stimulus funds over $500 must be inventoried. And just a little hint, sometimes I would use my phone to take a picture of that little serial number so I can make it big for these tired eyes. All right, next, Augustine will provide some relevant information on ESSER 3.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anita. Good morning, everyone. In this section, we'll be going over some reminders for the ESSER 3 federal grant, but specifically for program code 3214. So as a reminder, all ESSER 3 resource codes have an obligation deadline of September 30th, 2024. So we have a bit over 6 months left to obligate those funds. Again, just keep in mind that uses must always follow the following criteria. Align with the allowable uses of the applicable fund source. The cost is reasonable and necessary to prevent, prepare for, or respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and align with all relevant cost principles and requirements outlined in the Uniform Grants Guidance and the Code of Federal Regulations. So now let's talk about that resource code 3214 within ESSER 3. We wanted to highlight the requirement that LEAs must use 20% of the total ESSER 3 allocation to address the impact of lost instructional time through evidence-based interventions. LEAs are going to want to prioritize the use of Code 3214 funds, as failure to do so may reflect a lack of compliance with federal requirements. So what are some allowable uses that will satisfy the requirement of addressing lost instructional time through evidence-based interventions? Well, CDE has provided some samples, and they include summer learning or summer enrichment, comprehensive after-school programs, and full-service community schools, among several other uses. Remember that an obligation refers to orders placed for property and services, contracts and subawards made, and similar transactions that require payment. In the case of the 20% requirement, if we're using, say, teachers, teacher aides, counselors, and other personnel to address the impact of lost instructional time, well, that obligation is made when the employee performs the service. So why are we addressing this 20% requirement so much? Well, let's talk about the FPM review of federal stimulus funds. The U.S. Department of Education has provided guidance that indicates if an LEA fails to expend ESSER 3 Code 3214 funds on that required 20% to address the impact of lost instructional time, they'll be out of compliance and have a fine for this. So CDE is recommending that LEAs take a closer look at their ESSER 3 funds and make sure that they're meeting this requirement. In the Federal Stimulus Monitoring Program Instrument, CA10 specifically addresses the program requirements of the ESSER funds, and CA11 focuses on the plan requirements. So with that, let's take a look at a couple of considerations that our program and fiscal colleagues can discuss to gauge their progress with ESSER 3 requirements. First, how does your current ESSER 3 plan match with the reporting of expenditures? And does the reporting of those expenditures reflect the 20% requirement to address lost instructional time? Something, again, for our program and fiscal colleagues to ponder and discuss. And now, I'll turn it over to Debbie, who will go over arts and music in schools funding.
Thank you, Augustine. Good morning, everybody. So we're going to start with talking about Proposition 28, Arts and Music School Funding Guaranteed and Accountability Act. That's a really long name. Next slide. So this is the new law provided for arts and music in schools, and this statute defines arts education programs to include but not be limited to instruction and training, supplies, materials, and arts education program partnerships. And arts instruction, how they define it is here on the slide. Do you recall in your elementary school programs, I remember learning the recorder, that little black flute thing, and then joining band to learn the real flute. But other than that, I really couldn't remember much else as far as arts in elementary school. But arts education is really vast, and it covers so much as it's listed on the slide: dance, media arts, animation, computer coding, script writing, costume design, So it's a wide array, and this proposition is intended to supplement your current art program, not supplant. So you're not going to just pay for those recorders now with this money. You're supposed to be enhancing what already exists as far as your educational programs. Next slide. So the funding will be ongoing, and it will be sent to LEAs for that enhancement of their art programs. So annually, funds will be provided to LEAs to provide this arts education for their students. The amounts calculated are illustrated on the screen. So 70% of the amount allocated will be allocated to school sites based on their prior year enrollments. The remaining 30% will be based on the free and reduced program eligible pupil counts for the prior year. So prior year enrollment from TK-12 enrollment of census enrollment from CalPATS will be used, and the CSP data systems for preschool enrollment from October will also be used to determine the allocation for the LEAs, and then the enrollment, the school site allocations will be determined as on the screen. And here we have a link on our screen to the CDE's website that gives greater detailed information regarding this information. Next slide, please. So your use of funds. So each school site is supposed to develop an expenditure plan. However, the expenditure plan is not required to be posted on the website. It does not have to be board approved, nor is it to be submitted to the CDE. Okay? The CDE does recommend that school sites pool their resources so they can share teachers or teachers' aides or art partnerships. And art partnerships might be those contracts with outside vendors that come and do like the master's programs or different things that would come and could go to more than one school site. And school districts can help facilitate the sharing of the resources among the schools. So your LEAs can help you with that. And then scheduling. Arts instruction can happen during the regular day, but it also can happen before or after school. And students should be under the supervision of a credentialed, certificated teacher at all times for this instruction. Next slide. And so the use of the funds, one of the stipulations of this statute is that any LEA with 50 or more pupils should use the funds, at least 80% of the funds should be to employ certificate or classified employees to support the arts instruction. And then the remaining funds will be used for the training supplies, materials, and partnership contracts. Next slide. And the conditions of receipt. So if you receive these funds, you accept them, all funds will be used to provide arts education. So this is what you're guaranteeing. You're going to use the funds to supplement and not supplant. If you have more than 500 students, you will be using 80% of the funds to employ certificated or classified employees for the purpose of arts instruction. And then no more than 1% of the funds can be used for administrative expenses. You're going to be required to submit an annual board-approved report, and then you're going to have that posted on the website detailing the funding usage, which details the type of arts education program, the number of full-time teachers and classified and certificated personnel, pardon me, the number of students that are served, and the number of school sites providing the arts program. So this needs to be posted on your website. And again, there's a link here for greater information provided from the CDE. Next slide. And so for the fiscal timeline, so this is starting in the May, this is upcoming our May of the preceding year. The enrollment data will be used to determine an allocation amount. In July, the CDE will use the amount and begin the flow of funds. In February, a recalculation of the entitlement will be done with the updated prior year enrollment data. And then the funds will continue to flow to the sites, and the funds will be received as part of its monthly principal apportionment payments. to the LEAs. The LEAs will have 3 years to expend their funds. Then any funds not used will be reported in October following the closing of the 3-year period. And then the CDE will recover those unexpended funds and reallocate them in the subsequent fiscal year. Next slide. And then now lastly, the waiver overview. They do provide, the statute does provide for a waiver, and this is not just an open waiver if you just couldn't get to it, not at all. This is expected to be done, but however, waivers are submitted for valid reasons, and so they are not granted to a school site, but to an LEA. So why might you need a waiver? Well, maybe you tried to hire personnel, but you couldn't. So you did not expend those funds in that way. You want to spend them on other things. The LEA would then submit the request for the waiver, and then the decision would come to the LEA, and the LEA would receive the waiver for the entire LEA, not just for one school site. And the waiver would be granted for the duration of the expenditure period. And you can apply for this waiver at any point within the 3-year period. Okay, and that wraps it up for me. And now we're going on to, I'm sorry, to Jeannie for LCAP updates.
All right, thanks so much, Debbie, and good morning, everybody. So our LCAP update today provides some additional information about metrics, specifically the local indicators. And Helen and I started this last month, and we're going to highlight some of the local indicators that we didn't address last month. So here we are again referencing our LCAP metrics inventory tool. And so in addition to the this inventory checklist of primary data sources and corresponding CalPADS reports for metrics in the state priority areas, we've shared with you before that this tool has been updated to include additional data considerations that provide clarity and further insight into certain measures and considerations for metrics for local indicators. And the local indicators are where data is not uniformly collected statewide. So there's really a lot of flexibility in determining how you address the local indicators. And also it's important as LEAs are determining effectiveness of actions in the current year LCAP and preparing to monitor effectiveness of actions moving forward. It's essential to identify what metrics the LEA will use over the 3-year LCAP cycle to measure and monitor the impact of their actions for all of their student groups. And so determining a baseline and a consistent data source from which the LEA can annually collect data for the 3-year cycle is critical so that LEAs are prepared to determine the effectiveness of their efforts. And when selecting metrics for local indicators, we want to stress that LEAs should consider selecting 2023-24 data from locally determined measures or tools that the LEA is using to inform the narrative or the self-reflection tool for the specific local indicators. And so today we'll offer some options for LEAs to consider for metrics that might address their local indicators over the next 3-year LCAP cycle. So when including metrics for local indicators, LEAs have options to consider what data they are looking at to inform their narratives or the ratings that they are reporting on the California dashboard. It's important to consider what your LEA will measure that connects to the goals and actions in your LCAP that address the state priority areas where data is not uniformly collected. These, as you know, are known as local indicators. And included on this slide are multiple questions for you to consider for metrics for the local indicator being addressed by the goal in the LCAP. For example, does the metric align to the state priority identified for the goal? For example, if the goal is addressing state priority 2, implementation of state standards, do the metrics connect to what the LEA is using to measure annual progress in implementing state standards? Is each metric specific and measurable? And is there a consistent data source that can be accessed annually to show the impact of the actions in the goal? At the bottom of the slide, you'll see the screenshot we shared last month. We're sharing it again, that indicates standard met for the local indicator in the baseline column and in the target for year 3 column. This statement does not indicate baseline information or what is being measured. This is the statement that is reported on the dashboard to indicate that the LEA has reported on the local indicator to the board or governing body. Additionally, given that this statement does not include baseline information for a metric, there would not be any data to track and annually report a difference from baseline in the final column that is included in the new LCAP template. So this is a non-example. Okay? In the next few slides, we will share some considerations that may assist you in determining what your LEA might measure for the few local indicators that we did not address last month. So we'll take a look at state priority area 2, 3, and 6. Here we're looking at measuring state priority 2, implementation of state standards. And this slide offers multiple measures or ways for LEAs to consider how they might measure progress toward implementation of the state standards. You can see on the left, the content standards are listed, and as you know, there are many of them. These sample measures included on the right of your slide use a variety of locally collected data, such as data from teacher surveys, such as the California School Staff Survey from Cal Schools, as well as data that measures, for example, participation in content-specific professional development, or percentage of updated curriculum maps. May include observations of teaching and learning, data from coaching logs, as well as feedback forms or surveys from various educational partners. So considering these sample measures, we have some samples to offer for your consideration. And here, this set of samples considers locally collected data that may inform the local indicator narrative or self-reflection tool for priority 2. The first metric addresses the common formative assessments aligned to next generation science standards. And you can see that identified in the metric column. In this case, this LEA hasn't determined any locally developed common formative assessments aligned to the next generation science standards. So that is their baseline. And then you can see in the target for the 3-year outcome that what is anticipated is to have a specific number of locally developed units and common formative assessments for each trimester aligned to the next generation science standards. The second and third samples, you can see metrics that are connected to the math standards. In one of the samples, the LEA is measuring the practice of using classroom observation focused on the implementation of mathematical practices. And the other is using a teacher perception survey connected to the impact their professional development is having in the area of math. And the fourth sample offered connects to the ELD standards. The samples are offered for your consideration, and we really stress that your LEA has the flexibility to select from the metrics that are informing your local indicator data. And on the next slide, we take a look at how you might consider using the rating scales that are aligned to the local indicators rating tool for state priority 2. And here you can see that in the first sample, the rating is connected directly to what's included in the rating tool, in the local indicators tool, and this is addressing the use of collaborative time and focused classroom walkthroughs to inform improved instructional delivery. And you can see the baseline data information includes the ratings as they have been reported to the California School Dashboard. And additionally, there is a second sample addressing ratings included for CTE and world language programs. And now I'm going to turn it over to Helen, and she will share some considerations for local indicators for state priority 3 and priority 6.
Thank you, Jeannie. So priority 3 focuses on parental involvement and family engagement, which includes efforts to engage parents and guardians in their children's education in the school community. These measures include how the school districts seek parent input in making decisions for the LEA and their schools. In addition, it also includes how the LEA will promote parental participation in programs for low-income, EL, foster youth, and students with disabilities. Please keep in mind that parental involvement has been consistently linked to positive educational outcomes for students, including higher academic achievement, improved behavior, and increased school attendance. Therefore, priority 3 in the LCAP helps ensure that districts are prioritizing and monitoring their efforts to foster strong partnerships between schools, families, and communities, and ultimately contributing to the overall success of students. So let me share a few samples with you with what this priority 3 local indicator may look like. So in terms of parent participation in decision making, when examining this metric using the metric inventory tool, we see that this sample focuses on parents who have participated in at least one parent-teacher conferences broken down by categories such as low income, foster youth, English learners, amongst others. Regarding decision making, this metric relies on sample of responses to a question from the California School Parent Survey for parents to answer, and the percentage is calculated based on respondents. This methodology offers one way to analyze the data and be able to gauge the effectiveness of actions over the next 3-year period. And by consistently evaluating consistent metrics, school districts can better understand how well they are engaging with parents from diverse backgrounds and how schools actively seek input from parents for making important decisions, and also to determine efficacy of actions related to parent and family engagement. So priority 6 is school climate, and it entails measuring several factors. LEAs are required to address these state priorities as well as any local priorities identified by the LEA. Here we see that student suspension and expulsion rates are listed as state required metrics. In addition, the third bullet emphasizes the need for additional local measures to gauge student, parent, and teacher senses of safety and school connectedness. These local measures play a crucial role in providing a comprehensive understanding of the school environment beyond disciplinary actions, ensuring a more holistic approach to assessing student well-being and school climate. So the revised self-reflection tool for priority 6 mandates that the LEAs conduct an annual local climate survey. This survey aims to gauge student perception of school safety and connectedness. LEAs must ensure the survey captures valid measures of these perceptions across at least one grade level within each grade level span served by the LEA, such as TK through 5, 6 through 8, or 9 through 12. The revision clarified that the LEAs are not required to report disaggregated data for all student groups listed in the Ed Code section 52052 when reporting progress to the 2024 California School Dashboard. However, LEAs should report the disaggregated data if such data is available as part of the local school climate survey. So these are sample metrics for student connectedness and safety. These metrics draw from local surveys and the California Healthy Kids Survey to gather information. As previously stated, if available, the survey should offer disaggregated data for student groups. However, if not available, as demonstrated in these samples, data can be grouped by grade level spans. Providing data at grade level spans will provide more accurate measure to create actions and measure progress towards the goal. This sample here illustrates teacher connectedness and safety. And again, questions are from the California School Staff Survey. It includes surveys questions as listed. And once again, data is disaggregated by grade level spans. And finally, here we have the parent survey derived from the California School Parent Survey. As you can see, this is just one method of gauging connectedness and safety. The survey can be tailored to meet the unique needs for each of your school districts. And for your reference, again, all the sample metrics on the metric slides, we have included a direct link to the sample metric by priority areas. And while there may be other approaches to measurement, what's important and an important thing to remember is that to ensure the consistency in these metrics throughout the 3-year cycle. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Jeannie to take a look at some highlights from the LCAP checklist.
Thank you, Helen. So in your resources today, we've included an updated LCAP pre-review checklist. And this pre-review checklist is updated to align with the new LCAP template that is required for the new 3-year cycle. And we provide this resource to support LEAs to address the components in the LCAP template, as well as to support alignment across each of the LCAP sections. We recommend that LEAs share this checklist among those who are providing input into the development of the multiple sections of the LCAP, so that as the sections are developed, they address what is included in the LCAP instructions, and again, ensure there's consistency and alignment of information across all of the LCAP sections. As you know, the LCAP template is complex. It includes input from a variety of departments and personnel in the district, including program and fiscal personnel, personnel with expertise accessing metric information. So sharing this updated resource may really be helpful in supporting your process for putting all of the pieces together as you are developing your LCAP. Here on this overview slide, we provide an overview of the 24-25 LCAP district pre-review checklist. And so the checklist really provides an organizer for LEAs to use as they're developing their LCAP to tell their story about their process for reflection and engagement with educational partners in the annual analysis of current year goals, actions, and outcomes and expenditures, as well as to chart their course of action to support their students and families to address the 8 state priorities and to address the disparity of outcomes. This slide highlights the components that are addressed in the pre-review checklist. The annual update for the 23-24 LCAP is included in green, and this includes the outcomes for the current year LCAP and the goal analysis for the current year plan. This also connects to the action tables that are included in the red section. And in the red section are the components for the 24-25 LCAP, which include the sections noted at the top of the slide. These include plan summary, engaging educational partners section, goals, measuring and reporting results, increased or improved services, as well as the action tables with fiscal information and the budget overview for parents. In each of the LCAP sections, the checklist includes 2 columns. There's a column for clarification required for approval and a column with notes that highlight key requirements as well as alignment across LCAP sections and budget documents. Okay, so when an LEA participates or a district participates in the LCAP pre-review with our office, they submit their draft and we review it, checking for all of the components listed in each of the sections. If we have a question or something is missing, we will include information in that column that says clarification required for approval. And this provides an opportunity for the LEA to address that area needing more information prior to taking their plan to their board for adoption. And the notes column is really helpful because there really is crossover across multiple sections, and it also helps to clarify the key requirements. All right, moving on to the next slide. We are scheduling meetings with each district to review this updated pre-review checklist and to schedule LCAP pre-review. We have supported districts with pre-review in each LCAP year, and over the years, we really have received a lot of positive feedback from our districts about how this process has assisted them to develop a meaningful LCAP that also addresses all of the requirements. Our goal in offering the pre-review is to support districts with their process for developing their plan and to ensure that their district LCAP meets all approval criteria upon submission. The meetings provide support to guide the district to include what is required in each section, as well as to support coherence across the entire LCAP template. As we meet with your district, we can also support your district to consider submitting pre-review of specific sections of your LCAP draft for review and feedback. And this may support you to chunk out the LCAP development process and use feedback in a timely manner. We know the LCAP is a comprehensive document, and so chunking out your pre-review to address specific sections at a time may be something that would be helpful for your LEA. And especially in this first year of the new LCAP cycle and the revised LCAP template, chunking out your pre-review might be something that you would like to consider. So our office really looks forward to meeting with each of the LCAP contacts, and we always welcome program and fiscal personnel to participate in the meeting. And additionally, we will be sharing a self-review reflection tool for charter schools. And if you can click onto the next slide, we can see that this is scheduled. We have a scheduled office hour for April 23rd at 10 a.m. And we will be posting shortly, probably the beginning of next week, the updated self-reflection tool for charter schools. And we have received feedback from charter schools that this tool has also been really helpful for them as they are working on their LCAP development. So look for that resource posted sometime next week. And we look forward to meeting with charter schools on April 23rd. So if you'd like to mark that on your calendar, that date is provided for your reference. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Helen to address differentiated assistance and where it is addressed in the LCAP.
Thank you again, Jeannie. Okay, so in this section, again, we're going to share the technical assistance prompt in the plan summary. And if you attended the DA convening earlier this month, this will be a good review. And for those of you who did not get to participate in the DA convening, we hope that you find this information valuable. And again, this information pertains to districts eligible for differentiated assistance. So, like what Jeannie said, where does differentiated assistance support appear in the 24-25 LCAP? First, in the third prompt of the plan summary section titled Reflections Technical Assistance, this is a new prompt for LEAs that are eligible for differentiated assistance. This is where districts receiving DA support provides a summary of the work underway as part of their technical assistance. And LEAs eligible for technical assistance must also include specific actions within the LCAP related to its implementation of the work underway as part of this technical assistance. And keep in mind that in the LCAP description, think about who is doing what for whom, and consider the needs, conditions, and circumstances of the specific student groups being addressed. By the way, if your district is not eligible for DA, simply state NA or write not applicable in this prompt. So remember that the prompts are for that's right, readers. I knew you said it on your side of the screen, right? And the instructions are for the writers. And what you see here is the prompt, but more importantly, what you also see here is what the instructions say about the prompt. In this next few slides, we will go over the instructions more in depth. So quickly take a look at this data. The LCFF priorities are listed in the box next to it. And remember that to be eligible for differentiated assistance, districts have to be identified in 2 separate priority areas for same student group. The colors here represent the dashboard colors. Yes, that is orange under ELA for Hispanic group, not yellow. It depends on what kind of screen color hue you might have. It may look yellow, but it's really orange. So, not gonna have you wait. So, as you can see, the student groups eligible are Hispanic student group in priority with priority 4. They are orange in ELA and red in math, and priority 5 with graduation rate, which is red. The other student group eligible is the foster youth student group. The foster youth student group is red in the following areas: chronic absenteeism, and graduation rate, and which they're both are priority 5, and therefore it will count as one of the 2 priority areas eligible. And the other priority area in which the students have the red indicator is priority 6 under suspension. So let's take a look at how we can use this information to complete our prompt in the LCAP. So above, you'll see that there's instructions, and the first part of this instruction is highlighted with the red box around it. So now that we have a clear understanding of why this sample district, Cali district, we call it, was identified for differentiated assistance, let's take a closer look at how we can effectively address this first part of the instruction, which is to identify the reasons for eligibility, again, as noted in the red box. So for this sample, Cali District was identified for differentiated assistance based on the 2023 California Dashboard lowest performance ratings for Hispanic student groups in ELA and Math, Priority 4, and Graduation, Priority 5, and for foster youth students groups in Suspension, Priority 6, and Chronic Absenteeism and Graduation Rate, Priority 5. And by acknowledging these student groups, then LEAs can start to develop actions to address the needs in these identified student groups. So here's the sample frame again. What would be your response to the first part of the LCAP technical assistance prompt say about the student groups and their eligibility at your district? Which student group at your district made you eligible for the differentiated assistance? So I'm thinking for everyone who's participating, we should get this part right down on our prompt 3 of the plan summary. Right, and for the second part of the technical assistance prompt, we have given you a sentence starter on how to begin describing a summary of the work underway as part of the technical assistance. It reads, as part of receiving technical assistance, Cali School District has worked with the county office to ... And you can continue here and provide context to describe and support work underway. This is where you can summarize and describe the support that you are receiving or you're having at your district or your LEA. And again, this section was specifically for districts identified for differentiated assistance, and we hope that you find these samples helpful. This ends the LCAP updates, and now I will turn it over to Adrian for FPM.
Thank you. So now we're at the tail end of our agenda. And we typically in March, we kind of have a light agenda. And so with people and their various spring breaks kind of works out. So, but we'll end with FPM update and we will be giving you your gift of time. So I wanted to, on the next slide, I wanted to share for the 23-24 current FPM reviews. There's a table here that shows the number of findings for the Cycle B and Cycle D FPM reviews, but just in Los Angeles County. So these are just the school districts and charters in Los Angeles County. And so from here, you can see that we have some noticeable high numbers of findings. We can see EL still has, a high number of findings. There's 32 thus far for this school year with our LA County districts and charters. Also CE, the Compensatory Education Title I, they have 25 findings. There were 25, and there still are more FPMs to take place in April and in May. So this number may increase. And so, but also too, if you take a look at some other ones, you can see UCP has a high number, the EXLP, and also your CARES Act, the CA, and those are the federal stimulus. And so, what often the findings are is kind of reflects on systems. If you don't have systems in place, when you are reviewed, sometimes that's real apparent. So again, your superintendent signs those assurances that when you take these federal funds, that you indeed are responsible to have compliant programs. So we highly encourage you to create systems in place so that, you're always collecting the data, whether you're selected for an FPM review, because that's what you're legally required to do. And so the more you have those systems in place, then it's not dependent on a person in charge. It is dependent on everyone understanding your system and knowing the system and having checks and balances and internal controls to ensure that the policies, procedures that are in place are indeed followed. And so I will next month go more in detail about specific items and what are the common findings and why. But again, I just wanted to give you kind of a pulse of the 23-24 LA County FPMs. And now moving forward to next year, as the CDE is wrapping up the FPM cycle for B and D, they're also in the process simultaneously of moving forward. And on the next slide here, just want to remind everyone, if you're not familiar how FPM works, it is the FPM cycle schedule for school year. And you can see here as shown for each ELA, the cycle is every 2 years, so online and on site. All the LEAs in the state are placed in one of 4 groups. So they call it cohort A, B, C, and D. So for the next year, the 2024-25 school year, we can see that cycle A is up for review as well as cycle C. And so make sure that you do know what cohort you belong to so that you can prepare properly. On the next slide, we also, if you're not familiar with which cohort you are in, and again, this is for the districts. This is they're again categorized into the 4 cohorts, so you can have this for reference to determine what cohort you're in. And so as we wrap up on the next slide, we have the timeline for next year. So CDE is still slated to identify which LEAs that are in cohort A and cohort C, which ones will be identified. And how you will find out is the CDE will send an email to the superintendent. So when that happens, please make sure that you let your superintendent know or their support staff that you're waiting for this particular notification if you are in cohort A and C. And then once you get that notification, you will be asked to complete a web-based LEA scheduling and other requested information. You'll also be asked to inform the CDE on who is going to be the FPM review coordinator in your LEA. And this person will serve as their primary point of contact before, during, and after the FPM review. Then in May of this year, generally CDE will inform the FPM review coordinator the schedule of dates and schools that will be reviewed, as well as the programs that will be reviewed. And something I noticed this year is that the notification that took place in May of last year, as it got closer to the actual date of your FPM review, in the CMT, which is the system that CDE uses to conduct the online portion of your review, there were some changes. And I know that, it was due to CDE staffing and some other situations. So again, it at least allows you in May to kind of have a heads up of what hopefully will happen, but sometimes there will be changes that'll take place as we get closer to the beginning of next school year. And then in June, typically the program monitoring instruments are posted. For the most part, most of them are. Sometimes there are program instruments that are held up a little bit, so they tend to release them maybe sometimes in August, sometimes in September. So it's always good to kind of take a look at that. And we also do too. So we always try and let you know as well as because we're always checking the website for the CDE reviews. And then lastly, the trainings, if you are selected and you are identified in August, they will be doing a virtual training as they've been doing in the past few years since the pandemic. And this again will be slated for and scheduled for the first week of August. So this is kind of the timeline, and perhaps you didn't pay attention before, but if you're in cohort A and or cohort C, you want to make sure that you have everyone available for that first week of August to attend the trainings. So again, just want to remind you of the timeline for the 24-25 FPM reviews. And as we end today's meeting, we just wanted to include some upcoming deadlines. And so you can see on this slide, we have 3 here, the home to school transportation plan. And for those of you that have adopted a 1-year plan, you need to update this plan annually by April 1st. So that deadline is fast approaching. And if you are an LEA that adopts a multi-year, then you can proceed without an update until the expiration of the term of your plan. And then for year 4, ESSER and GEAR annual reporting, the reporting window opened March 6th and will close April 5th. So that deadline is fast approaching as well. And then also too, your federal cash management data collection, your CMDC, that you will need to submit your data reporting for period 4, and that closes on April 30th. And so we've also included the web links for any additional information that you may need to look up and refresh your knowledge of these upcoming deadlines. And so that, again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are some that perhaps if you're a program person, you need to touch base with your fiscal people. And for fiscal, then again, it's a reminder for you. And this concludes our meeting today. And next April 25th will be our next state and federal programs directors meeting. So we want to, put that on your calendar. We want to remind you of this upcoming meeting. And as if there's any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. And of course, we want you to please complete the evaluation for today's meeting. And you can either follow the link, or you can see in the chat, or you can follow the QR code. And again, we really appreciate your feedback, and we appreciate you joining us today. And we want to wish you a happy spring break if you're on it now and you're here with us today, or if you're, next week, you're planning to. So again, we're always here to support you. Please email us, call us. We will get back to you, and we will, do the best we can to answer any questions you have. So thank you so much, and have a great day.